Hi, I'm Lawrence. So what's the state of my current practice? Okay, so imagine there's a little clearing in the wood, and in this little clearing there's a house, and it's a haunted house, haunted by the disappearance of a mother. That house is the location of my current practice, and I'm currently grappling in that space, room by room, a re-domestication, a repossession. This is my major project. In the last module, I populated the room of visual metaphor, of transitional objects, such as a birth shawl, a comfort blanket, a xylophone. And in this module, I'm in the playroom, a transitional space between fantasy and reality. Playroom because my work these past 12 weeks have taken the form of a game. My children have chosen a range of domestic scenarios that they believe applies to me, how they see me. And then we combine those by drawing lots with the various characters that I tried to become as a child and into adolescence. And then with the things that my son does and enjoys for himself. Now, play is one of the invisible strings that joins these images together. A string which, to quote psychoanalyst D.W. Winnicott, helps in the wrapping up of objects and in the holding of unintegrated material. It's like an umbilical cord that leads back to mother. Toys and tools now loom large, a response, perhaps, to the line of cars or the aircraft of Lartigue, or to my cohort colleague Dee's own visual play through making with hands. Lartigue with his camera, my son Tom with a wheel, me with a lightsaber, Tom with a pastel crayon, me with a whip, both of us with sticks. Freud writes in Beyond the Pleasure Principle that it's clear that in their play children repeat everything that has made a great impression on them in real life, and that in doing so they make themselves. Or Johann Heutzinger in Homo Ludens, in play there is something at play, which transcends the immediate needs of life and imparts meaning to the action. All play means something. And as I read Winnicott, I became convinced that what I was doing as a child and then sometimes in later life was itself an act of creative play, a becoming through doing. Without hallucinating, he says, the child puts out a sample of dream potential, lives with this sample in a chosen setting of fragments from external reality. To control what is outside, one has to do things, not simply to think or to wish, and doing things takes time. Playing is doing. Now, the play element is also at work in the very capture itself. Whose gaze is it? Mine, the male gaze in the setting up of the lighting and the positioning of the camera, or the female gaze in that my daughter chooses when to release the shutter and provides the direction? Are we perhaps her dolls, like, for example, Lady Clementine Howard's daughters? And is there another dimension here with the female sitting over the project, a little like Bourgeois's spider, or the mother out of view, out of the action, but impacting totally upon the events of the two males within the pictures? Or is it the gaze of chance, in that the scenarios were pieced together, like jigsaw, by the game itself? And from the surrogate wombs of the last module, the bubbles, the shawl, to the surrogate wombs of this module, the den, or of course the house itself. Now, I went into this module expecting to be bouncing off the works of people like Cindy Sherman or Joe Spence's Putting Myself in the Picture, or Carrie Mae Weems, or the mask play of Ralph Eugene Meachard's The Family Album of Lucy Bell Crater, but no, I've been completely swept away instead by Anna Cassis Broder and how she created wombs of light in her work Kinderwunsch, which I've shamelessly imitated, perhaps poorly in my own work. Our work is very different. Hers is an exploration of motherhood through play with her children. Mine is its opposite, exploring the absence of motherhood through play with my children. Or to Alina Brotherus, whose work Annunciation reveals the visual intensity of stillness, of confined longing, and of home being this transitional space between dreams and reality. Or Janine Anthony, whose work in Habit provided an element of serious play, in which she sees herself as actually becoming the house. And perhaps less subtly, to Louise Bourgeois, whose spider mother becomes den, boy play, and surrogate womb, in my own work, combined, of course, with James Bond. And investigating this transitional space between fantasy and reality, I've been drawn into the writings of Hayden White, and he's questioned me to ask what my photographs might say of truth. Because these are fictions, but the fictions are actually the fact. So is my son's very strong sense of self. And in talking about narrative or literary approaches to history in the past, he mentioned specifically novelesque history. White suggests that truth may consist less in what they assert or declare, in the mode of factual truth-telling, than in what they connote, in other moods and voices. In my own work, I'm self-consciously declaring very little. And like Brotherus and Broder, I'm attempting to reveal, suggest, symbolise, imbue, very much indeed. And so what is this project now? A year ago I envisaged a social documentary project looking at lone fatherhood, and it seemed to have a fairly steady course towards an editorial project, or a book, or a display in a gallery. Well, this isn't that. This is perhaps becoming a layered book. I visualise it as a trifle. The base was the metaphorical response to maternal abandonment of last term, the id perhaps in Freudian terms, or early childhood. This current work resembles a disintegrated ego, or adolescence in its focus on the in-between. Next, I'm driven to explore the very top layer of adulthood, and perhaps a return to the source, a mother or mothers.